Hey YouTubers, this is the Gold Standard 00924 coming at you with another video for you guys today. Now this is going to be sort of another installment in my Wrestling Reimagining series for you guys today. So I'm going to be sort of doing a fantasy rebooking of a particular Wrestlemania, especially now that Wrestlemania is just around the corner. Looking back at this particular Wrestlemania, it was one of those really oddly booked shows and pretty experimental. Now, this was a precursor to a lot of the WrestleManias that you ended up seeing in recent years. It seems like with WrestleMania, it seems like they just want to go out their way and try to get as many wrestlers on the card as they possibly can. And WrestleMania 2000 really was no exception to that rule. And there was just a bunch of other wrestlers that were there just for the sake of being there that really had no business being featured on the card. Now I understand, WWE during this time, it was in the midst of its popularity. The Attitude Era was still in full swing, and there was just so much depth in their roster during that time. And I understand what they were trying to do and making the most out of the roster that they had. And, WrestleMania being the biggest pay-per-view of the year. But when I look at the card from top to bottom, if you look from the actual card that they had, there was just hardly any traditional one-on-one matches compared to the WrestleManias before and after this show. And that's kind of what I'm referring to when I describe WrestleMania 2000 as a very oddly booked show. And you had a lot of multi-man matches. Like, for instance, you had a couple of tag team matches that mostly belong on, like, Raw or SmackDown or even Sunday Night Heat at the time. They also had, the Hardcore Battle Royal, the two-fall triple threat match, which was basically a 2 out of 3 falls with the European and Intercontinental titles that were on the line since Kurt Angle was a dual champion at that point. A fatal 4-way match in the main event, which was actually quite groundbreaking for the time because before that we never seemed to have any main events that were consisting of triple threats or fatal 4-ways. I mean, the first WrestleMania, granted, it was like a tag team match, but even in between then, you had a lot of one-on-one singles matches, and then you get to a show like WrestleMania 2000, and you had Triple H going in as champion, defending the belt against guys like The Rock, Mick Foley, and Big Show. Like, they had the heel go over, which was also pretty a big monumental feat at the time. But in hindsight, it's like, what was the whole point of that? And granted, it did turn out for the better, especially with the situation that The Rock and Triple H, that was like a hot feud going on at the time. And, The Rock would go on to, win the WWF title the following month. So, not all of it was completely bad, I'm saying, but it's like, what was the point of just waiting until the next pay-per-view to do it? You could have really used, this particular opportunity to give The Rock a chance and, kind of have WrestleMania go home with a happy ending. That's really what I'm trying to get across, is put together a well-balanced pay-per-view card for that matter. Am I saying that I'm the best booker in the town? No. I'm not gonna bullshit you guys into thinking I'm like someone that's an insider working in the professional wrestling industry. But I'm hoping to put together the best possible pay-per-view card that I could possibly think of. I'm gonna basically kind of run through some of the matches and just tell y'all guys what matches I would have featured in this wrestling reimagining of WrestleMania 2000, how I would build up some of those said matches and how we're going to get to where we end up getting. So that's basically what the premise of this video is going to be about. Now, actually, one more thing before I get started. Now, I'm going to try my best to utilize the wrestlers that were available to me at the time that this pay-per-view took place. So I'm not going to utilize any competitor that was injured or any competitor that wasn't even wrestling for the company at the time. So I'm not going to have let's say Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm not going to book him on the card because in reality, Steve Austin was taking time off due to undergoing some neck surgery that he had from the infamous neck incident from Owen Hart back at SummerSlam 97 towards the tail end of 99. So they had Stone Cold being written off by getting run down by the car. And so they had Stone Cold just written off to kind of, get some treatment. And realistically, you honestly don't want to have someone like Stone Cold to, just automatically return to wrestling after he just came off of undergoing neck surgery. So I'm not going to include him on this card. Same goes with The Undertaker, another top wrestler that was also out of action during this time. And granted, he would return later in the year, but he's not necessary here. So with all of that aside, I might as well just kind of kick things off with my fantasy rebooking of WrestleMania 2000. Now, the first match that I had on here to open up this particular event would be a one-on-one match consisting of Eddie Guerrero taking on Essa Rios. Both Eddie and Essa were just debuting right about the same time, or close to the same time. Eddie Guerrero still representing the Radicals. The purpose of this match, it doesn't have to be like complex for that matter, because this is like the first match, so it's definitely going to be a match that's kind of like, it's two wrestlers, just go ahead, have a match. Nothing too elaborate, but what those two wrestlers have in common, both that they're from the south of the border, they both wrestled in Mexico, both of them have history wrestling in other organizations. Eddie would eventually go over to the WWE just around this time. So you could maybe build like a little basic storyline and just basically have Eddie brag about how he's the best luchador around and that there's nobody better than him, especially when it comes to the art of lucha libre. And Essa Rios kind of chimes in, takes offense to that. Now, granted, Essa Rios isn't really known for speaking fluent English, so you would have Lita, who was just debuting alongside with Essa Rios to kind of be his mouthpiece. This is basically just two wrestlers with similar wrestling styles, and I want to kind of open up WrestleMania with a match that's filled with a lot of fast-paced action. And this was just months after, the Hardyz and Edge and Christian were really tearing down the house with their series of matches. So I really feel that the crowd could really be highly entertained with this match. And even WCW did this when they were at their peak, where they would open up with a cruiserweight match, and you have like these two wrestlers just going out there having a match and putting on the best showcase possible. So that's what this match is basically designed to do. Now, I won't necessarily bring back the light heavyweight title in my universe. I just really felt that the title was just unnecessary. It was obviously just WWE's attempt to capitalize on WCW's cruiserweight title. There just wasn't really that whole, like, they didn't necessarily have enough talent in their disposal to have a light heavyweight division at this time. And granted, they had Dean Malenko coming in, and even some of the Too Cool members like Sky Tuhati, Grandmaster Sexay were kind of going at it. Let's see, Taka Michinoku, because he was also the first light heavyweight champion. Essa Rios in reality did, however, win the light heavyweight title around the time he debuted. So I just don't really see the necessity of bringing the light heavyweight title. And even also given the fact that there's been other singles title belts in WWE at this point. So there's just really no need. I mean, WWE had the world title, the Intercontinental, the European, and even the Hardcore title. So there's just too many singles titles, and I just don't really see the need of bringing back the light heavyweight title, which they basically discarded around the time that Gilbert won the title. And then, like, he wasn't even in the company throughout 99. I believe they had him come back on an episode of Sunday Night Heat. And then, like, Essa Rios won the light heavyweight title in reality. But if it was up to me, I would not bring back the light heavyweight title. And just basically going to be a one-on-one match just to get the crowd rolling. And Eddie Guerrero is going to go over Essa Rios. You could create some dissension going on between Essa and Lita, leading to a situation where Lita parts ways with Essa Rios in order to side along with the Hardy Boys. Basically what they ended up doing, and it really worked well for Lita in the long run. I would have Eddie Guerrero go over Essa Rios in a pretty good match. It doesn't have to be too long, 7-8 minutes. But I'm pretty sure that this match would be really off the chain. If you watch their match that they had the following month at Backlash, you would get the idea where I'm coming from. And that's kind of the template I'm going with in this reimagining of WrestleMania 2000. And I would definitely have Eddie Guerrero to come out on top. Now we get to the Hardcore Battle Royal for the Hardcore Championship. Now I'm basically keeping this match. Now originally I was pretty reluctant whether I wanted to keep this match, and I realized there was just so much wrestlers that were in this division, and the Hardcore division was such a staple in the Attitude Era. When people think of the Attitude Era, they think of hardcore wrestling, and the Hardcore title symbolically represented one of the key elements of the Attitude Era. The Hardcore Battle Royal, it wasn't like, the traditional Battle Royal in the sense where you had to like throw your opponent over the ropes in order to get eliminated. But what they did here is basically a precursor to the Scramble match that they ended up doing many years later, where you would have like a bunch of wrestlers coming out there, and there's like a specific time limit, and you had to like pin your opponent, and then you be the champion for a short period of time up until the time limit expires, and only then you would become the official said champion. In this case being the Hardcore champion, for instance. So I would still have Crash Holly going in as champion, the Houdini of Hardcore as he was dubbed during this time. And, he was definitely really, really underrated of a worker. I don't understand why he hasn't been in the Hall of Fame as of this time. But yeah, he was just insanely over. And I would still have him as champion going into this event, defending the belt against his cousin Hardcore Holly, the Big Bossman, the Road Dogg, Al Snow, Steve Blackman, Val Venis, and Tazz. Now, in reality, they basically had, somewhere between 10, 15 competitors involved in this match, which is completely insane, just even thinking about that. And that's why I said I was kind of reluctant, because just the whole amount of wrestlers that were in that match, they were just kind of brawling back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth, which, it sounds pretty entertaining, but only during backstage segments, or just during in-ring segments for that matter, when they do that to kind of advance a storyline. But then you get to like a sanctioned match when they're doing that kind of stuff, and it just gets very tedious after a while. And that's kind of one of the problems that I had when they did this match in reality. There's just a lot of brawling inside the ring, outside the ring. Then they're like brawling backstage, and then they're coming back. It's like, it's so all over the place, and you couldn't really tell just what the hell was going on. And I would still keep this match, but I would definitely do some minor adjustments to it. One of them being lessening the amount of wrestlers that were in this match. Now there's 8 wrestlers that I had involved, which may seem like a lot, but it's not as much compared to the amount of wrestlers that they had. I believe they had 15 wrestlers. I could be wrong about that, but I mean, I kind of cut that out by 7 wrestlers and just kind of made it like a 8-man match. And most of them are former Hardcore champions anyways, like Big Boss Man, Tazz, Hardcore Holly, who else? Road Dogg was Hardcore champ. Steve Blackman, I don't think he was even Hardcore champ at this point, maybe later down the year, but at the time that WrestleMania 2000 took place, I don't think he held a single Hardcore title. I mean, I looked up at the title reigns. I just kind of feel like they executed this concept better later the year at Unforgiven when they did a similar match. I definitely don't mind seeing Crash or Hardcore walk out of the match as Hardcore champion, even if I can't seem to avoid the botch that they had at the ending where the wrestlers, where it got very confusing as to who was the hardcore champion at the time that the buzzer reached 0. But it's definitely going to continue either way. I mean, they end up doing another match at Backlash. Definitely going to keep this match, but I just kind of made some adjustments to the match to kind of lessen the amount of wrestlers that were involved. I mean, most of them didn't really have any business being in there. And then we get to the European Championship bout. And this is going to be Kurt Angle going as the European champion, defending the belt against Tazz. Basically, their rematch from the Royal Rumble. Kurt Angle just bit more than he could chew. He got too cocky, and then he stumbles across this badass in Tazz, and he just completely decimates Angle to the point where he just choked the living life out of him with that Tazz mission. So Angle's kind of, he's, like I say, he's kind of trying to pick back up the amount of steam that he lost after being crippled at the hands of Tazz. Around this time, I know Bob Backlund and Kurt Angle had this little, partnership of sorts. Bob Backlund was, popping up some of the time in the weeks leading to WrestleMania 2000. They didn't, he wasn't an active member on the roster necessarily, but he did show up time to time in the weeks leading in this pay-per-view. And he'd be interfering in matches. He would be attacking guys like Jericho, for instance. And what I would do here is that, because Tazz never really seemed to kind of recover from that momentum that he had when he debuted at the Royal Rumble, I wanted to do a one-off match between Tazz and Backlund at No Way Out. Maybe do a one-off match just to kind of put over Tazz and to kind of build up leading into this eventual rematch. Make it kind of a big deal of sorts. Also at No Way Out, I would still keep Jericho and Angle. And the only thing that I would change towards the end is where when Jericho did that line salt and then Angle used one of the Intercontinental or European title belts to use it as a means of self-defense. So after that particular moment that happened, I would have Tazz come out there and just decimates Kurt Angle, even gives him a Tazzplex, and then Jericho could go for a second attempt at the line salt, which this time would be successful in allowing Jericho to retain the Intercontinental title. How all this kind of goes in is that, after Tazz beat Backlund, Angle attacks Tazz and even beats him up. Things start getting a lot more personal, and Angle's definitely not having it. And when Angle looks at the tapes, just seeing Tazz just destroy him the way he did, Kurt Angle just basically goes on the mic and just basically kind of going back to what was going on from the Royal Rumble. It's Tazz, you might have put one hell of a game. You might have destroyed me in that match, and you may have choked the living life out of me, but one thing that you didn't do, you didn't even tap me out. You may have caused me to pass out, I didn't tap out. That I am your Olympic hero. I never give up. I take my vitamins, I say my prayers. The first time that we fought, I just wasn't at my A game. Now that I'm the European champion, I beat Val Venis on SmackDown to win my first championship belt here in the WWF. And now I want to prove to you, Tazz, that I can be better than you. I may not have a lot of brawn, but one thing that I have that you don't have, Tazz, is that out of the 3 eyes that I stand by, and he goes in and points his forehead, and kind of giving that little implication that he's all about intelligence, that it's brain versus brawn, which is basically what the theme of this build-up leading this match is going to be. The match is set. Angle Tazz, the rematch, Angle Tazz 2 for the European title. Maybe have Bob Backlund as Kurt Angle's corner man. Maybe do some vignettes where they're training together, and Angle's like doing everything he can to kind of get himself in tip-top shape. Maybe he'd be like at the gym doing some push-ups or doing some military presses, whatever the case may be, and to kind of really show that Angle is really learning from the mistakes that he made during his initial encounter with Tazz. And so this kind of leads us into this match. There could be a moment where Kurt Angle would nail the Olympic slam on Tazz, and then like Tazz kicks out, and then at some point Tazz, when he regains his momentum, he could lock in the Tazz mission, and we could do a moment from WrestleMania 8 where Kurt would use the ropes to his leverage. He could do what Bret Hart did at WrestleMania 8 and use a roll-up and counter Roddy Piper's sleeper hold. And Kurt Angle could do the exact same thing and then like use the turnbuckle post to his advantage and then creating a roll-up for him to successfully retain the European title. But I think he could really benefit a lot better if he was in a role like this, and to kind of do a rematch to say like, you know what, Tazz, you may have beaten me the first time, but this time I'm much better than ever. I know your game, and I know without a shadow of doubt I can beat you. As far as Tazz's perspective, because, Tazz beat Angle before, and, I could sure as hell beat you for that European title and just kind of build it from there. I would definitely have Kurt Angle going over Tazz. Angle's definitely got plenty of years ahead of him, even if I didn't know at the time, but, he was just still coming in the business. He was still trying to find his footing. I mean, he wasn't necessarily the wrestler that we ended up growing to love, but he was still learning at this time, and I believe Tazz could at least still carry him to a pretty good to great match. And like I said, I would definitely have Angle beat Tazz in order to retain the European title. And then we get to a next match, the Triangle Ladder match for the tag team title belts. The Dudleyz defending the belt against the Hardyz, Edge, and Christian. Not a match that I would change. I'd definitely keep this match. This was really a very groundbreaking tag title bout. This was no DQs, no countouts, no pinfalls or submissions. Only way to win is to successfully retrieve the set of tag title belts hanging above the rafters. I mean, what's more to be said? Nothing to really rebook. This match happened the way it did, and I would have Edge and Christian walk out as the match still the tag team champions. And then we get to a breather. Now, this next match and the matches from here on out is basically going to be the same structuring that we saw at WrestleMania 2000. I think it's really one of the few things that I think they did right is the structuring of the card. And after the Triangle Ladder match, we did however, had a Divas match of sorts. What I'm going to do here differently is add kind of like a bit of a narrative to this particular story. I would have the Women's Championship belt being up for grabs. So I would actually have Ivory going in as the champion, defending the belt against the Cat. Now, the Cat was, really over during this time. She was definitely a reasonably focal part in the Divas division when it came to storylines. And Ivory was kind of like this heat magnet. And she was basically doing that feminist gimmick that would be sort of like a precursor to her run when she became a member of Right to Censor. And her feminist gimmick just basically going against women that are being objectified and that she can't really stand women being exposed physically and like getting all down and dirty and just being used as like sex objects. So yeah, so she was basically doing that gimmick even before she went on to join Right to Censor, and even before the RTC stable was even formed. I would definitely have Ivory come in as champion, defending the belt against the Cat. Now, I do, however, have the Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young involved in this mix, because what I had is the Fabulous Moolah being in Ivory's corner and the Cat being in or Mae Young being in the cat's corner, excuse me. Moolah and Mae Young had their kind of riff going on at the time because there was actually a little bit of a promo, like following the infamous moment where the Dudleyz powerbombed Mae Young through a table. And when Michael Cole was giving the Fabulous Moolah an interview regarding about Mae Young's injury, Fabulous Moolah didn't have any like sort of remorse or had any like sympathy for that marriage. She's like, all Mae Young cared about was the fame and getting all this exposure and all this attention. And she was just kind of sick and tired of Mae Young hogging the spotlight. And what we could do here, maybe on like a segment on Raw or SmackDown, they could have had maybe, Mae Young in a wheelchair and just basically discussing about her reaction as far as getting put to a table by the Dudleyz and how it just kind of makes it sick to her stomach of how the Dudleyz went off the deep end. Fabulous Moolah would interrupt, and then Kat would just basically defend Mae Young. I don't understand what Mae Young ever did to you. I mean, you guys were best friends, and I don't understand why you seem to hold a grudge against her in the first place. What did she ever do to you? And then on cue, Ivory ambushes the Cat from behind with the woman's title, which would automatically set up this particular title defense at WrestleMania. So, wouldn't necessarily be a long match. It'll definitely be what it is for a Divas match at the time. You aren't going to get a very long match, and you're not going to get like an instant classic right from the word go. It's not like, what we're seeing with women's wrestling in WWE these days. But there's definitely a narrative to it. And the kind of narrative needed for fans to, get invested in a match like this. I would have the Cat go over and become the women's champion. And it would definitely be a transitional title reign. I'm not expecting her to hold that belt for as long as the end of time, but Kat's going to have a transitional title reign and eventually losing it to Stephanie McMahon. And then we get to the 6-man tag team match. Now, this is the match that they ended up doing, but I kind of swapped certain wrestlers around. So I had Rikishi and Too Cool taking on The Big Show and two members of the Radicals, Perry Saturn and Dean Malenko, with Shane McMahon in their corner. Shane McMahon still having his affiliation with The Big Show. Basically switched out China for Rikishi and switched out Eddie Guerrero for Rikishi. Or Eddie Guerrero for The Big Show. Obviously, Big Show did not win the Royal Rumble, therefore he wouldn't even go to WrestleMania. And then we kind of continued doing what they did with Rock and Big Show just making all these lousy excuses about how that he should be the winner of the Royal Rumble because The Rock's feet touched first before mine. Just whiny, just stupid, dumb promo by Big Show, and leading to a match at No Way Out, which Big Show would still win. But then they ended up doing the rematch, like they ended up doing in real life on Raw, where if The Rock lost, then you would never see The Rock ever again. But if The Rock won, then he would go on to WrestleMania and be involved in the WWF title contention. And Rock would go over Big Show, get his win back like he did. There will definitely be a number of run-ins with like some of the DX members coming out there, and then like Rikishi and Too Cool coming out there to even the odds, and that will definitely play a part in The Rock going over the Big Show and take back his number one contender spot. That transitions into Big Show's feud with Too Cool, and the Radicals, given their rivalry going on with Too Cool during this time, so that also kind of gets juxtaposed into this whole alliance that guys like Saturn and Malenko have with the Big Show. And given that Shane McMahon did help Big Show beat Rock at No Way Out to initially gain a number one contender spot, so this kind of leads us into the 6-man tag team match. I'll definitely have Rikishi and Too Cool going over. It's basically sort of how it played out, but just with a couple wrestlers being swapped aside or being replaced, I guess you could say. And then we could have like a WrestleMania moment where Rikishi basically stink faces both the Big Show and Shane McMahon simultaneously. Rikishi and Too Cool get the last laugh. They do their little dance off like they do. Then we get to the Intercontinental title match. Now, this is going to be Chris Jericho still going in as Intercontinental Champion, defending the belt against Chris Benoit. So this could be a way to kind of start off their series of matches that they would end up having throughout 2000 and eventually leading into their climatic ladder match at Royal Rumble 1. I didn't want to do the two-fall triple threat. I just felt like Kurt Angle, he's like I said when I was talking about Kurt Angle, I mean, he was still kind of finding his footing, and he wasn't necessarily the kind of wrestler that he would eventually evolve a year or two later. I just decided to kind of go with a one-on-one match. Two wrestlers that have been, that they've been wrestling for many years up in this point. They've definitely got a lot of experience in the play. They could definitely tell a good story, and they have shown that before. And WCW, and even when they got to the WWE, they got to showcase that they could really go in the ring, and they definitely had some really great chemistry, both in terms of as rivalry and even when they ended up becoming tag team partners and champions. So I would definitely have Benoit go over because he was just making his debut during this time, and he already suffered a loss at No Way Out, so why have him suffer another loss at another pay-per-view? I'll definitely have Benoit go over in this match, and he's going to walk out as the new Intercontinental Champion. Maybe some interference from Radical members. Jericho could come up short in this match thanks to their interference, and Benoit could maybe have Jericho tap out to the crippler crossface, and Benoit would celebrate along with his Radical buddies and becoming the new Intercontinental Champion. And then we get to Last Man Standing match, and I would have the special guest referee being China. This would be Kane taking on X-Pac. So Kane and X-Pac is a culmination of everything that had been going on for over a year, the more you think about it. Because, WrestleMania 15, Kane was kicked out of the corporation. X-Pac was betrayed by two of his friends in D-Generation X, Triple H and China. So then X-Pac and Kane formed this tag team, and they would go on to hold the tag titles on a number of occasions. When DX ended up reuniting later in the year, X-Pac betrayed Kane, even despite teasing the possibility of Kane being a additional member of DX, but that was just all a ruse. X-Pac and Kane started having their rivalry going on, and Kane also had his relationship with Tori, but it turned out that Tori cheated on him for X-Pac. So that kind of boils into a match that they ended up having at No Way Out. No holds barred match that X-Pac ended up winning by using the steel steps. So then we get to another round of their series of matches, and this would be the war to settle the score. This would be obviously no DQ, no countouts. But another catch is that there will be no pinfalls, no submissions. The only way to win the match is if the wrestler remains standing at the count of 10, would overall win the entire match. So therefore, this leads us into this last man standing match. And we would have special guest referee China being put in this mix. And given China's history with both Kane and X-Pac, because the more you think about it, because going back to what I was saying, China and X-Pac were part of DX. China betrayed D-Generation X even in the months leading to WrestleMania 15. Everything about this just kind of really brings us full circle. And China also betrayed Kane at one point. Both of them were part of the corporation, and they had their little teased romantic relationship. You could also, plant some doubt in the Kane's. Like, he's had a history of being backstabbed on many occasions, like with China and like with X-Pac, and then eventually Tori. It's like, what are the chances that China's gonna backstab on you again? That could be like a promo that X-Pac could make mention. You could do a last man standing match. Basically, you could, it's basically anything goes. And so it'll definitely be a match to really put an end to their year-long rivalry. Kane is going to go over X-Pac in this match. He's going to completely decimate him, and eventually we will get that moment where Kane will tombstone Tori, have him go out on a happier note. And it turns out that, China and Kane are good on good terms. They make amends. Just basically end the feud here. So, yes, so I would have Kane going over X-Pac in this match. Now, in my main event, this would be for the WWF title. Triple H going as the champion, taking on The Rock. It's definitely a no-brainer, just given how significant of a match this could have been if it had been a traditional one-on-one match. Rock winning the Royal Rumble, Triple H retaining the WWF title on a number of occasions, especially with Mick Foley beating him twice, even retiring him in that Hell in a Cell match. It was really all set in stone here, especially there wasn't really any other alternative route to go with, especially given the main event division was kind of thin during that time since Stone Cold and Undertaker were out. And, Mick Foley was already out the window. And I understand that they eventually brought him back not long after his initial retirement. But I honestly thought that was a mistake in hindsight. Even if I was booking this in real time, I would be against that idea. I would have had Mick Foley off TV for a number of months before he would make his eventual return as WWF commissioner. And for the time, they were crafting a pretty effective story about all the odds that are stacked against The Rock's deck, and Rock doing everything he can to kind of up-one the McMahon-Helmsley faction, and despite all the obstacles that are thrown in his path, and he would always be putting these handicap matches, and putting all these very odd situations where he's doomed to fail. I love some of the elements that they were doing leading into Wrestlemania. But I wouldn't have done the McMahon in every corner shtick, and therefore, the one-on-one match I would have done instead. There wouldn't have been any point in doing a McMahon in every corner since it's not going to be a fatal four-way. I would have The Rock go over Triple H and have him walk out as the new WWF champion. Just how it should have happened in my opinion. Granted, Rock would bounce back shortly after, so not all hope was lost, and they did a pretty good job with their match at Backlash, eventually leading in the moment where The Rock would finally overcome the odds. That was some pretty good stuff, I'll admit, don't get me wrong. But I would rather have The Rock win it at the biggest show of them all. Even though Rock, in my universe, would win this main event, you could still do the rematch at Backlash, bring back Vince McMahon, have him betray The Rock, and then, you could have had the McMahons get even more involved than ever, like they ended up doing, but after WrestleMania, after The Rock gets his big-time moment at the big show like WrestleMania, and, he could walk out of that pay-per-view as the new WWF champion, send the fans home happy, as they say. So that's basically my card for WrestleMania 2000. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. Are there some matches that you would like to keep from the original card? Or, are there some matches that you would look forward to based on the fantasy booking that I provided here? And what matches would you put in your fantasy rebooking for WrestleMania 2000? So let me know down in the comment section below. I would gladly hear your guys' thoughts. Definitely appreciate some feedback for that matter. Thank you all guys for watching, and until next time, this is the Gold Standard 00924 signing out.